Do you guys hear that? Play that for any fish fan. And the majority of them would immediately be able to locate it to Nassau Coliseum on April 3rd, 1998 for the second night of Phish's famed island tour. And that's where this episode of Undermine lands. Hi, you're listening to Undermine, Season 4, Episode 52. I'm your host, Tom Marshall, and I'm joined today by my cronies, RJB and Benji Eisen. Say hello, guys.
Hello, guys.
And hello, ladies. Multi-beasts, unit monsters, anyone watching on YouTube, and of course, anybody else listening. Did we do that right? Did we include everyone?
Yeah, I mean, how many multi-beasts do you think are watching?
Tom, that sounds like a joke, but I don't know the punchline. RJ?
3.
I don't know how you came up with that number. Maybe it's because we have three more concerts to talk about. So this is the second of the island tour shows. We're going to dive into today's hot topic, April 3rd, 1998. So yesterday, Benji gave us a little overview of the venue. RJ, what can you tell us about Phish's spring tours? They toured round the calendar up to a certain point, but by 98, it had been a few years since they did a spring tour.
Yeah, in the US anyway. I mean, they were, doing some support dates and doing some Europe stuff for a while, but from the spring of 91 through spring of 94, they did huge end of winter spring tours. I mean, dozens of shows, and then shifted to summer tours by 95. So I don't know, is this a tour or is this a run? Because I think toward the end of 4 or 5, Trey says this is getting to the end of this tour here, and they called it the Island Tour. But was it really a tour or was it a run? I don't know.
It was an Endora bug, and if Brad Sands hadn't come up with the Island Tour, it would have been the Island Run or the Spring Run. But so New Year's Eve in April was fun last year as the spring, talking about spring dates for Phish. But having just done, I did 6 of these recent 8. I did the bottom 6 of the recent 8 that they did out in the West Coast. Oh, cool. And I have to say, I have to throw this in here, and I'm throwing it in anywhere I can get it in. I'm in favor of Phish adding Hollywood Bowl as an annual spring weekend. The way that Ditz is, we know that Ditz is every Labor Day weekend, and it's a tradition, and it built and built and built to where it is now. And I feel like Hollywood Bowl, it's just, the venue was perfect for that in so many ways. It was the most incredible run, but it's the type of venue, and being in Los Angeles for a spring weekend, I feel it's the type of thing that would just immediately build into what could be a great Phish tradition. But in 1998, as we've mentioned, hinted at, and alluded to before, the Island Tour is kind of spiritually linked to 1997. Or, maybe it's a bridge to the summer of 1998, or maybe it's both. It falls in between those two, musically, as well as on the calendar.
I like the idea of the sort of a spring California Hollywood Bowl thing, because we have so many East Coast traditions and festivals sort of wind up here. I mean, apart from maybe 1 or 2, but there's also like you said, Dix is the center of the country. There's no real tradition on the left coast for all the fans there.
Hollywood Bowl is, I know from a concert, it's an expensive venue to play, but it is just such a beautiful venue. And it's like Radio City Music Hall. As anyone that saw the photos from it, it's just, there's an element to it that's just incredible. And everyone's in their own little box. It's the perfect venue for Phish to do a West Coast tradition in. And
all us East Coasters look at it and we're like, wow, there's no roof. What do they do in case of rain? And it's like, oh, there's no rain ever. It's 72 every single day.
I think it's a good idea. And thank you for tuning into our episode of What Phish Should Do Next.
Well, let's get to the music. This night opens with a really powerful segment of Mike's song, then Old Home Place instead of Hydrogen into Wickapog. RJ, what do you think of the opening frame?
Well, our friend, my friend Jonathan, who is on the Helping Friendly podcast, he loves Hydrogen, and so he would want me to say that they should have played Hydrogen, but I don't think it matters here. I mean, this Mike's is, first of all, it's a opening, statement with a lot of power. I feel like first set Mike's openers are just like, it means that they're ready to rock. They were comfortable. This was kind of a little bit of a darker kind of jam, but then it kind of like mellows out and has the true segue into Old Home Place, which is a really nice combo. And man, this just really sets up quite a show. I think we all knew that after a Mike's opener, like this was going to be a pretty crazy show. But this Weekapog gets out there too. And up to this point, I mean, the show before, they hadn't really gotten into the dirty, dark stuff, but they did it right away here. And this opening 3 songs is perfect. It's perfect. This whole thing's perfect. Benji, what are your thoughts on this opening part of the set?
Well, first of all, I love that Weekapog, just like anybody else that's ever heard it. And then opening with a Mike song, opening the show with a Mike song, it's like a 0 to 10 moment, and if you look at it now, we talked about the Tube yesterday as being a continuation of 97, and Tube is a huge opener, and one that's extremely rare, but it's just huge. And of course, the following night we have Tweezer, and then the following night after that we have the Okipan, You Enjoy Myself. And so they were making statements. They didn't want to warm up. They were warmed up, and it's a
home run, but no one's on base, so it's not a grand slam, but it is a home run.
It's not, yeah, exactly right. But whereas maybe opening up with Runaway Jim lets you ease on in and all that, like Fish was sort of saying, "Look, guys, we came here to play. Let's not mess around."
That's a really good point, and but Tom, as a baseball fan, a leadoff homer, even if you only get one run out of it, it's still a great way to start. So
everyone stands up, and it's an incredible thing. I've seen that. Don't ask me what game. I've seen one. Yes,
I saw it 4 times in a row at the Island Tour.
So there's this Weekapog, by the way, according to Fish.net, there's a lot going on here. There is teases of the song that would become Mozambique. In this Weekapog, there's a Cross-Eyed and Painless thing, Nelly Kane, Brazil. I mean, there's a lot going on here, and so the Weekapog is, even though I feel like not always, but most of the time musically, you look at the Mikes before you look at the Weekapog, or at least I do. I think maybe I'm just not that good at understanding Weekapog because I know a lot of people love them, but I feel like it's
in Rhode Island.
There are more stellar versions of Mike's than Weekapog, so you tend to go for the Mike's, but this ending of Weekapog is it's awesome. So Tom, we get there's a train song, Billy Breeze, Beauty of My Dreams, and then we get to Dogs Stole Things. And as I was listening back, there's another song that debuted the year before in 97. I have 2 dogs, and I have to say, we just got a puppy, to keep our older dog company. And I feel like they're slightly being maligned by this song. And maybe I'm just being sensitive because I just got a new dog. But is there anything to my concerns about this? Are dogs, are all dogs bad?
Well, dogs stole things I needed bad. Cats took what I never had. So they're both being maligned, maybe, or maybe not, but not really. I mean, apart from what the song says.
I already knew that about cats.
Well, dogs and cats have their own agenda, and at night you have to sort of you sleep with them in your house. They're animals, and you have to trust them to leave your soul intact. So usually you can, because they're usually harmless, but unless your dogs are demonic, you probably have nothing to worry about, because you don't want them to steal your soul.
Is there any test you can do for that, or is that just something that you know?
You have to learn by experience.
It's an intuition?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I think other people's dogs don't have souls. They need a soul. Yeah.
Wow. That's getting pretty deep.
So they're on the market.
The Reba here, we haven't talked about the Reba. It does not have a jam chart entry on Fishnet. It's not, I think, talked about that much, but I really enjoy it. And I mean, maybe because I like Reba always, but I think this is a great version and another piece of the set that kind of holds it together with the mic screws at the beginning.
it's a great Reba. And then of course My Soul ends the set. And just like that, the time has come for a commercial break. We will be right back. I promised you we'd be right back. And even though I wanted to run, here I am. And here we are. We're currently seconds away from Lights On, Set 2, Night 2 at Nassau Coliseum for Phish's Island Tour. Do you guys like this set?
Well, RJ, I'll take your and I'll raise you a lot. At the time, 4-3 set 2 was my favorite set of the Island Tour. And I say at the time, I think like historically for most of the time between then and now, it's been my favorite set of the Island Tour. It's just in the past couple of weeks, listening back to all 4 of these nights, lifetimes later, the Providence shows, as you, I think, alluded to, RJ, on our last episode, not only have they withstood the test of time, but they kind of were overlooked in parts of them. And despite the fact that the Island Tour as a whole is so praised as an entirety, but individually, I think a lot of people look at Nassau and maybe that last set from Providence. And the Providence shows have proved to have something in common with the Wu-Tang Clan. They ain't nothing to fuck with. but Nassau. Yes, I just compared the Island Tour to the Clan. But Nassau Night 2 has two of my favorite elements of a great night of Phish, and it's like my equivalent of I guess if they open with Punch You in the Eye, Tom. If these two elements are there, I know it's probably going to be a favorite set that I'm going to listen to for years. Humorous antics, but not just that alone, because anyone can do that. Humorous antics and a musically brilliant Type 2 jam that goes places and that takes its time getting there. So as much as we have a lot in store coming up in Providence, Nassau Night 2 is still my favorite set from this particular island, man. And I mean, from any year, it's my favorite set of music that Phish has played on Long Island.
Well, Benji, like Wu-Tang Clan, I'm still trying to understand this show 25 years later. It's just a monster,
It's too good. It's too good.
It's too good.
The second set,
and
yeah.
The Roses, that opens the second set. This is a historic and monumental jam, but there's so much going on. I mean, there's everything. There's dark, there's bliss, there's ambience, there's effects. There's a lot happening here. But there's only 3 jam chart entries for Roses Are Free. This one, Big Cypress and Worcester 2012. And, they just kind of brought this out, and maybe it's done as a jam vehicle, but because we're still in a time machine, let's stay on this version. Tom, can we talk, or Benji, either of you who want to jump in? This song, of course, is not by Phish. It's by Ween. They played this first on 12/11, right? At Rochester, and then MSG on 12/31. So why do you guys think they started playing? I mean, clearly there's like a history with Ween and Phish geographically and all that, but like why at this point did they decide to bust this out as a cover?
Doing my research, which is basically just putting headphones on and listening to the show and walking for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 miles, I stumbled when I got home upon one of our good, amazing friends, Osiris collaborators, when we can get them, Amar Sastri's Anatomy of a Jam. Look it up on YouTube because it explains a lot about this particular Roses Are Free. He goes into very deeply, but also never boring, about actually piecing the jam together, why all of a sudden there's like this amazing quiet part on the 4th beat of the measure, but he does it in such an incredibly interesting and graphic way. And then like Trey hints at B flat 7th Mixolydian, and then Page answers. And when Amar tells you it's happening, you can hear it and you can see it. And it's a completely compelling, amazing thing. And Amar took apart lots of shows and lots of songs with Anatomy of a Jam, but at this one I was completely engrossed, and it's a great Roses Are Free. And basically he kind of just begins by saying Trey was sort of obsessed with Ween, and he got obsessed because Ween and Phish signed with Elektra at the same time, basically. And one of the first albums that Sue Drew, I think their A&R person, handed Trey and said, by the way, these guys, I think they came from somewhere near you guys, near Princeton or somewhere in New Jersey. These guys are signed too. And Trey got, was it Pure Guava, I think, and listened incessantly to it. And then I think Chocolate and Cheese is where this is from. But anyway, it kind of explains it. So check that out, Amar. Shout out to Amar.
Hey, Amar.
I'm gonna have to check out the Amar's Anatomy of a jam. But in layman's terms, with this jam, the reason I think my favorite part of it is in the very beginning of the jam. The jam has it twists and it turns and it has all these little wonderful folds to it. But I love the vocalizations that start just as the jam gets going, because that shows you their own excitement. Like it's almost like the music is just bubbling out of them. So not only on the instruments, but they're actually adding vocalizations. And, I love this this kind of, oh shit, nervous system attack that happens on my body. And I think it happens to everyone inside the arena when everyone realizes it at the same time that there's this newcomer, this brand new song, as you mentioned, RJ, this unlikely Ween cover that came, in Rochester, took us all by surprise. And 2 times in, it's not a jam vehicle, it's just a quirky cover. And then all of a sudden, we all knew at the same exact moment that, holy shit, they're blowing this wide open. And it's suddenly a monster, totally unexpected type 2 jam, which of course it's no secret. It's my favorite type of jam, unless there's a type 3. But the kind that, the kind of type 2 jam that it literally comes out of nowhere. It comes when you least expect it, and so hit me with the unexpected type 2 jam. And if it works, well, then 25 years later, I think I'll go on a podcast literally just to high five about it. But it's not coming out of a Bowie or Down with Disease or Tweezer where they're all expected. It's when it's in something like Roses Are Free, when it's never been done before. Those moments are the type of moments that I live for.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think we talked about this on this podcast and probably HF Pod. Like I think there are jams. Tahoe Tweezer comes to mind, which are not. I mean, they're spontaneous in that they're improvisational music, but there's clearly like an intention to do that. Same to me with the Ruby Waves from Alpine from 2019. Like I think their time, Trey even said like that night they thought that Mercury was going to be the place where they really pushed it, and then it ended up being Ruby Waves. And this is by contrast just so it just feels like you said, Benji, it comes out of nowhere. And Tom, I'm glad you brought up Amar's video. I mean, he's so good at analyzing music and making it easy to understand. There's a part about halfway through this jam where Trey just starts kind of this very like 2-note riff, and the way Amar explains it is like Trey is playing smaller voicings because Mike and Paige are taking up more space. And then later on in the jam, Amar shows a chart on each bar, which of the 4 of them are playing, and then like Trey will drop out on the fourth bar, and there's so much. Like I don't feel like I'm very good at explaining music, but Amar really is. So
there's an amazing attribution too to the 2 Ween guys, Dean and Gene, kind of marveling that no one figured out that Roses Are Free is sort of their tribute to Prince. And then Amar talks about how Trey and the band got to go to Prince's secret studio for a secret show and saw Prince. And that was where Trey realized what an incredible rhythm guitarist he is. Someone else was doing something and Prince sort of dropped back and played amazing rhythm. And Trey got so obsessed with that. And Amar says that that's what the vocalizations are. They're sort of Princey, and that Fish realizes the Prince roots of this song, and also that Trey was playing kind of Prince rhythm by dropping out, going to 3-string chords and then to 2-string chords, just sort of going back while the rest, while Mike and Paige were taking over. And like I said, check out Amar's explanation of it, and it makes perfect sense.
It all makes perfect sense. There is one more part of this I want to talk about, which is that about 23-ish minutes in, it goes into this ambient space, and in any other, not any other, but in a lot of other situations, it would just go into a ballad, or they would go into the next song, and they take a full, minute or so to just kind of sit there, and then Trey picks up this little riff, and if you know it, you know it, but maybe you'll hear it right now. But this just, and it picks it up and gives it another, 10 minutes of life to this jam. It's just unbelievable. But as monstrous as the Roses is, this set, classic 4-song second set. And the reason I said, earlier is that it wasn't 3 songs. I mean, 4 songs is fine, but I'm really chasing a 3-song second set.
Well, it's 5 if you count it as Nassau Jam.
True. Good point. Very good point. The Piper that it goes into is just another huge. I mean, there's just nothing else to say besides huge. But the end of Piper, the last few minutes, it gets sort of, it's out there, and it doesn't really feel like we know where we are anymore. And then Page starts a piano solo, and it doesn't really have anything to do with Loving Cup, but then it eventually ends up into the Loving Cup intro, and it's just such a rocking version. I really love that part of the set. I mean, there's what's not to love,
Absolutely. And they kind of like, with Roses and Piper kind of went into, I mean, everyone was loving it audience wise, just because it was weird, but it was weird. There was some bizarre spacey stuff that, like, if you wanted to groove, that didn't kind of happen until Loving Cup. And when it came, it was such an amazing release. Like, what a Loving Cup, and what a perfect place exactly for it in this show and in this tour. But something happened in Loving Cup, RJ, and kind of explains what all this Carini's gonna get you stuff happens in Antelope. What is that? Do you want to explain it for some people that might not know?
Well, I don't think I actually saw this when it happened, but a well-intentioned young person who didn't have clothes on ran on stage, and
he had shorts.
He had shorts. Okay. He wasn't wearing a lot of his clothes. But he got, I mean, I can't imagine what would happen to you these days if you did that. I wouldn't recommend it, because I don't think it's a very good idea. But Carini, Pete Carini, who was, there, I guess. I don't know if he was the first person to be there, if he was the assigned person to.
He was fast. He was fast on the scene. I mean, this dude, it was like kind of, I think Loving Cup was kind of almost over. They were just coming back into, whoa, what a beautiful buzz. And suddenly from the right, this dude, I imagine he jumped up from the audience. I don't know where he could have come from, because he probably couldn't have made it side stage. But anyway, suddenly he appeared from the right and ran in front of Fish, Mike, and Trey, and kind of, he was dancing, and he was very athletic, because he looked and Carini was running right at him, and he just jumped, like, casually stepped into the audience and disappeared. And it was amazing. It was kind of like Trey, everyone was smiling. Page, because he didn't like go up and like try to, as I've seen people do, like high five Trey or something. He just was dancing, and it was kind of harmless and fun.
So Carini actually didn't get him.
Didn't get him. He just missed.
He just missed.
Stage crashers, especially at the time, were kind of an occasional phenomenon that I never fully understood. But I remember watching this one unfold, and I remember, based on the commentary that they were giving, and I think Fishman's commentary about how you can come up here, just know that if you do, Carini's going to get you. I remember thinking, oh, that's a mistake for him to say. He kind of corrected it too. He said, don't come to the drummer, or whatever it was that he clarified. Yeah. But I remember thinking at the time that they're creating a safe space for stage crashers, or maybe establishing that it's not a safe space, but giving them a challenge, It
wasn't the right thing to say.
No, it wasn't the right thing to say. But
today's professional Fish would not say it.
Would never say, come on stage, but Carini will get you.
Just don't mess with the drummer.
And don't mess with the drummer. But, I'm sure Trey loved that. But, coming off a set like that, I don't think anything was a safe space. And, maybe that's the point here too. Maybe that guy just had his fill of the Roses are free.
Yeah. Well, you said, Benji, earlier, like the humor and the music, creates kind of the special thing for this particular show. And, does this Antelope, which is like any late 90s Antelope, or most of them anyways, just so intense and so fiery, and what a great end.
Because of that, RJ, and it has all the elements, right? So when it's one thing for a band to have a lot of humor. It's one thing for a band to just be focused on improvisational jams or lyrics that are poetry. But Phish, as we've documented time and time again, they have all these elements and a million more. They're a dance band, they're a funk band, they're a jazz band, they're a space ship, taking off. And this night had it all. So I'm gonna say, I'm gonna correct what I said earlier, where I said this was my favorite setup from this island. I think this was my favorite overall package show from the 4 nights. It's very tough competition with what we have coming up the next 2 nights. But there's just something fishy about this night that I really loved. Something extra fishy.
Yeah, especially, I mean, first set was great, but set 2, there's something totally unbelievably magic, can never be repeated. And like, also just like, thank your lucky stars kind of thing that you were in the room. I mean, it was completely outrageous and unbelievable Phish. And listening back, it like all comes back to me with huge amount of emotion.
So we can't end this without talking about the encore, which is, of course, Carini, into Haley's, and then Tweezer Reprise, which, there's a lot of videos that exist that show Trey in full kind of rock star moment. A lot of them are from '98, actually, but I think this video of him during Tweezer Reprise, it's possibly the top. I mean, this is like, he's just at the top of his rock star game and just strutting around the stage, playing Tweezer Reprise. And it's so fun to watch and such a great way to cap a show. But just watching that video still, it just gets me fired up.
It's the best. And I saw it labeled as, and once you hear this, you'll never not see it. It's Trey's dinosaur stomp. And it's the dinosaur. It's a dinosaur stomp.
It's also his victory lap. He deserved it this night. He got touchdowns. Throughout. He
wanted to play a whole other concert. He was ready to play completely, just keep going. But it was amazing. Everyone left after that Carini. Like, what do we do now? Well, how do you make 20,000 people drive from Long Island to Rhode Island? Play that Tweezer Reprise. Because it was amazing. Tomorrow we're hopping islands, and we will meet you on 4/4/98. Divine Providence. Undermine is brought to you by Osiris Media. Executive producers are Tom Marshall, RJB, and there's another person. Oh yeah, Benji Eisen. Edited by Eric Limarenko, mixed and mastered by Matt Dwyer. Production assistance from Nick Sejas. Original music by Amar Sastry. Art by Mark Dowd. Thank you.
Tom, before we officially end, tomorrow when we talk about 4/4/98, will you tell us about anything you remember about the bus ride from Long Island to Rhode Island?
Yes. Anything I remember.
Okay. Stay tuned for that. Bye.
And a few things you don't.